Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. First, foremost, big story. Thing that caught the most attention on the Twitters, outside of this being Joe Biden's day. And it's kind of interesting that this happens today. But Steve Bannon, the Breitbart founder guy, the Trump puppet master, interesting character. Let's leave it there. Arrested for fraud. Him and three other schemesters, alleged schemesters, had their little plan to build the wall. Their We Build the Wall crowdfunding campaign raised over $25 million. And what's interesting is I remember a couple years ago when this first started, someone on Twitter, and in fact, my son and I were just talking about this, that this is why you need to get a good education, because math is important. This woman had tweeted out that they had gotten like almost $5 million. And now their goal was to get to $5 billion. But they had raised, like close, like 4-point-something million. And she tweeted out, we're 95% of the way there. Just a little bit more to go. And you go, no, dum-dum. You've got millions. You were seeking billions and nowhere close. You're like 1% of the way there. Good, nice job. Thank you for proving that to my kids why math is important and why they need to do well in school, so you don't do this. But here's the thing: they did raise, $25 million for this Build the Wall campaign, and according to prosecutors in New York, a lot of it was diverted. Hey, look, you need the household items covered. You need to pay your credit card bill. You need a lot of stuff. And they skimmed a little. This is, I guess, on a certain level, something that I expect from these groups. So and I remember saying at the time, and it was like 2 years ago when this happened. I remember going, if you're giving them money, they're not going to build much of a wall for that money, and a lot of it's going to get skimmed because this is what corporations do. This is what these folks do. So it's not surprising to me. But they allege that of the $25 million, that was supposed to 100% of it, every dime, because the people who put this together, they were, good, God-fearing, border security, American-loving Christians. 100% of it, not one dime was going to go to their pocket. Well, of the $25 million that they raised, they're saying that Bannon himself pocketed more than $1 million of it. So that's a whole way from zero. And as they're saying, that he's got expenses, What's interesting to me, though, is they arrested him on, I forget the name, like Lady Liberty or I forget the name of the boat, but this gigantic $28 million yacht is where they grabbed him from. And he was with a Chinese billionaire. So much wrong with that picture. And yet the right loves this guy. Now, for me, Steve Bannon, quite simply, is the guy who brought white nationalism to the mainstream. He's the guy with Breitbart who, full on white nationalist. So I give him credit for that. And look, he got, a white nationalist in the White House. So yay, hooray. Now my email inbox bombed with people defending him. This is all a setup. This is, this is the state of New York, punishing, all of that. I got to tell you, the receipts don't lie. And I'm sure we'll see this play out. But my first thought, and I tweeted this out almost immediately after I saw the story, is I think Bannon is one of those guys who, if he sees his own path diminished, if he sees his path going right into a 4x4 bunch of walls, because we have built walls. Bannon wanted to build some walls. We've built these giant buildings that have 4 walls, and we've surrounded them with enormous fence with barbed wire on top of it, and we've put like guards with guns all around it. They're called prisons. Once he gets behind one of those walls, I think he's going to sing. And the thing is he knows all of it. And now Trump today, again, as he does when anyone connected to him gets into trouble, immediately distanced himself. Well, he did a little work, did a little bit for us, a little bit. I don't know anything about what he's doing. I'm not involved. Yay. Fun. And this is another one of those moments where I go, Trump is going to do anything he can possibly do to stay in the Oval Office because he's got almost the immunity from prosecution at this point. As long as he stays king, he won't go to jail. Because I don't know that New York is going to be a very hospitable home for him once he's no longer president. And that played out today as a judge, basically threw out his latest hope to quash the prosecutors in New York from getting his tax returns. Just chucked it out, threw the lawsuit out from Trump and his legal team. And at some point, this is probably going to happen. At some point, this is going to go down the road. And we're going to find out. Did he pay Stormy Daniels a whole bunch of hush money? Is there an account? We've seen the check with his name on it. But it's part of this questionable use of funding. So not surprising to me that this is where we are. So we're going to talk a little bit about Steve Bannon today because I'm just happy. I mean, this is one of those, good news, finally. A criminal has been arrested. Now, interestingly enough, he was in and out of court, man, like this. And I guess that's what being white and having a ton of money and connections will do for you. He was arrested and he was in and out within a couple hours. I mean, it wasn't, I think back to the guy in Philadelphia, poor black guy with mental health issues who stole 3 peppermint patties from a corner store and spent over 500 days waiting for trial. Bannon's out in a couple of hours. But he pled not guilty, put up $5 million. They have restricted some of his travel. He's not allowed to go on private boats or private jets without permission. So that means the Chinese guy can have him back on at some point on the 172-foot yacht, I believe it was. $28 million. Now, what's interesting about that is the other news today, and to me, the more important news, is the fact that unemployment claims ticked up. Over 1.1 million Americans filed new unemployment claims, which tells us that the economy not doing great. Now, look, the reality is Trump's trying to run on, hey, how great it is and how wonderful the economy's doing, and we've bounced back, and all of that stuff. Not so much. And the sad reality is we're a long way from a return to happy times, and we're trending in all of the wrong directions for us. I mean, the S&P 500 and the stock market doing pretty well for those at the very top. For the rest of us, not so much. And the thing is because our government is so dysfunctional, because the leadership that we have is so dysfunctional, Wall Street's feeling pretty secure in that, hey, things are going to keep like this and we're going to be in control for a while. Rage on. Rage on. So the question I keep coming back to is, when do we as the voting populace say enough is enough already? I mean, over almost 175,000 people are dead from the coronavirus, and we haven't hit the worst part of it from what experts are saying. That's coming in the fall. We still don't have things in place, institutions, programs, whatever. We have no infrastructure in place where we should have been building this stuff now. We have none of that in place to meet the next challenge. And that, again, is a failure of leadership. And I know the Trumpkins will say, well, who could have known? Who could have possibly known that, we would have a boomerang and a second wave? Who would have possibly known? Well, everybody would have possibly known, which is why you prepare during this lull moment. And that's always been the word. Okay, we got through the initial shock of it. Now we move forward to try and find a vaccine. We work on things that are going to help mitigate the risks. But we kind of mapped this out. In fact, the person who was the head of the program during the Obama years said, look, we basically laid them out, a roadmap. We gave them, virus for dummies, where this is how you do it, and they burnt it. Not only did they burn it, they said, well, if Obama said we have to do it this way, we're doing exactly the opposite. So there is that. The other news today I thought was interesting is even our own government right now is saying we're horribly dysfunctional and can't do anything, because the Department of Health and Human Services has now done an about face on how hospitals report their critical information on coronavirus. Remember for a bit, well, we don't trust the CDC. No, not trusting them because they're reporting what's coming in. No, we're going to hire a private contractor. We're going to bring in someone else that we can pay even more to. This way we can manipulate the numbers. This way we can, as George Bush famously said, we can fudge the numbers. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, they are evidently going to return the responsibility of all the data collection to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. I think this is a good thing. I think it's something that should have never been undone. But I think it speaks volumes to just how dysfunctional this government is. And I'm hoping that starting tonight, we're 75 days away from election night. 75 days away from how do we save the nation from the insanity that is Donald Trump? How do we return to being proactive and letting experts do what they're supposed to do? I keep saying that I don't believe this would have happened under President Hillary. I believe from the start we would have done a bunch of the things that needed to be done to ensure that this didn't spread as quickly as it did. And there are studies that kind of bear this out, that had we acted a week or 2 or 3 weeks sooner, had we not had a president who was diminishing and mocking and calling it a hoax and all of this, had we not had that person, thousands of lives could have been spared. And if we did have to lock down, I think there would have been a more unified, coordinated lockdown. And maybe once we got past this initial shock of New York and California and Washington and Democratic areas, had we gotten past that, maybe we wouldn't have had to deal with the second part of the first wave, which is all those southern states being hammered because, well, they have Donald Trump as our leader. Just my thought. I'd love to hear yours, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Lots to get to tonight. Obviously, it is Joe Biden's night. He will accept the Democratic Party's nomination for president. When we come back, we're going to talk with our good friend Scott Dworkin, co-founder of the Democratic Coalition, about the big gala tonight, even though it is online, and I'm kind of miss it. We're going to give some thought to that. Going to take a quick break. Right back with our good friend Scott Dworkin. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1922. That was the day 1,300 workers from 4 railroad brotherhoods walked off the job in Joliet, Illinois, near Chicago. The walkout threatened to paralyze freight service for steel mills in nearby Gary and other regional industries. 400,000 railroad shopmen had been on strike across the country for nearly 7 weeks. Newspaper headlines that day warned a general strike of 2 million trademen loomed on the horizon. Brotherhood leaders promised sympathy strikes in response to threats made against their members by troops on duty at railroad centers and yards. There were also real concerns about the health and safety of trainmen, given rolling stock was no longer being maintained. In Joliet, workers stayed away under threats from troops. Additionally, Illinois Central trainmen faced threats from striking miners throughout Kentucky and Illinois who warned, "Stop transporting non-union coal or suffer the consequences." Resentment had been building up against state guard troops stationed in Illinois yards. Earlier in the week, striking shopmen had engaged in a fatal confrontation with Joliet sheriffs that left a striker and a railroad detective dead and scores injured. Riot orders were called when authorities sought to arrest striking shopmen who had stormed the home of a scab. Brotherhood workers refused to return to work unless the troops were removed. Warren Stone, president of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, stated, quote, "We are not going to have our men shot up or beaten up or threatened by armed guards at railroad shops and yards. When the men cannot go to work without having irresponsible armed guards endangering their lives, they may go home and stay there. There will be 100 more cases soon if conditions are not changed." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on the day that Joe Biden's going to accept the Democratic Party nomination for president, it's interesting that 73 former national security officials across Republican administrations, from Reagan to H.W. Bush to W, and even Trump's administration, they have formed a new group that is formally endorsing Joe Biden for president because, well, their words, not mine, although I wholeheartedly agree, Donald Trump is dangerously unfit to be president and commander-in-chief. And here to share some thoughts on, well, our dangerously unfit president and hopefully the person who will unseat him. I've asked our good friend Scott Dworkin to come back and share some thoughts. Scott is the co-founder of the Democratic Coalition, also host of the fantastic Dworkin Report. Scott, thanks for taking time for us. Somehow now we don't hear Scott. You there? His microphone must have gone off. I love how that happens. You do your sound check before, and it just goes away.
How about now?
There you go. Welcome. Thanks for hitting the right button.
You know, it's coronavirus problems. I don't have a producer handy or anyone. So this is I'm my own audio engineer.
There you go. So what do you think of this new group being formed, 73 former national security officials formally endorsing Joe Biden for president?
I mean, it's par for the course in regards to Republicans trying to rebuild their party and credibility and, fight back against the Trump regime. And so I think it's really great. I think it's one of many groups that you'll see form like this, whether it's national security, which is going to be a big focus of everything. Faith is another thing. So, religious leaders as well have really, really come behind him, especially evangelical leaders for Biden. And obviously, a lot of members of the Catholic Church, as he's Catholic. I mean, I think religious leaders see a person who actually practices religion and believes in God. And so I think that is very attractive to people who are preaching or, giving a sermon on Sundays. So it's, there's a lot of things here at play.
Yeah, and look, I think Biden's a guy who can hold the Bible the right way.
Right.
Not-
And he,
Start there. Start with, you know which way is up.
and he probably could walk across that street while people are applauding him and not have to push them out of the way and beat them. There wouldn't be protesters there. I mean, there's always protesters to the White House, but not that level. Because they wouldn't need to be there because he'd be working on the policy that actually would need to change.
Yeah. So tonight is Joe Biden's night. I'll tell you, I've been saying it all week. I'm disappointed. I'm saddened. I'm down by the fact that I'm not in Milwaukee right now, because I was looking forward to the conventions. I was looking forward to this week and next. But we're doing this virtual thing. I wanted to get your assessment of the virtual convention platform.
I think we're making the best of it. I think the good news is the more compressed time format, because in convention past it's been long and tiring. And as a person who's worked on a convention, one of the things that I worked on in 2012 was the stadium speech that was never given. It was given within the convention halls because there were a lot of different reasons. But we had planned out everything for the stadium. Carolina Panthers Stadium. I think it fit with the people that would be sitting on the field. It was like over 100,000 people, and he had done that in Denver as well. So there's a lot of things that go into convention planning. So the to be able to swing this into a 4-day, 2-hour night television special where people actually are giving positive reviews. I mean, for the most part, it seems. I think that they've made the most of it, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it, and I think that again they've made the best of it. Now, when we see Trump and Putin's Republican convention next week, we are gonna see a reality check as to how disorganized, how cheesy, and how fraudulent and attack-based they are. They'll have no platform they're actually presenting, and the only things that they do present will be things that are Biden's ideas that they actually don't embrace. So like universal health care, they'll act like they're doing that. They've always supported it. We made Obamacare better. Like he said that. So we'll be ready for anything. But I think given the circumstances, the DNC has done a phenomenal job.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to next week's, I'm calling it Fear Fest 2020, because all they've got left is to scare the hell out of people. So, if Maslow had a definition of the bottom of his hierarchy, it would be embodied by what we're going to see next week.
Right. And it's been swallowed. Obviously, with the arrest of Steve Bannon today, that is going to cloud the entire convention, as he helped run the party for the last few years, basically. So you have that, as well as obviously the other indictments that are hanging, and then you have the testimony of DeJoy on, I believe, Friday, Saturday, and Monday. So that's going to take up a lot of the airspace, on top of the fact that it's not like Biden and and Harris and the Obamas are going to stay on the sidelines now. This is an everyday thing. This is an everyday combination of digital campaign and campaigning, presenting as if it's one-on-one. And I don't think that Trump will ever own the news cycle ever again. And
we're 75 days from Election Day.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping you're right. I'm hoping each of those 75 days that Biden and Harris and Obama and the rest of them, just out there hammering away.
Yeah, no, I believe that that's the plan, and they've really pushed hard. I think that the Obama speech last night was phenomenal. Michelle Obama's speech was better because it's Michelle Obama, but I think for a former president to call out Donald Trump by name without giving him the title of president at least twice last night was, for him, I don't know, it seems like something that might be small. That is gigantic. That's a big deal. That's probably what bothered Donald most about the speech. not giving him the title, and a former president not referring to a current, supposed president as president, which he had always done, which he's always done for the most part. I think he may have accidentally, but then corrected it. Like, he did that intentionally. He said he is basically unfit to serve. He said everything that, even if he said it, I looked back and it's like, even if he said it a few years back, like, it would have helped nothing. Like, it wouldn't have helped move the football. It would just made him, more politically polarizing. And I think they've seen how terrible people, and he's really stepped back out, he out of retirement. And, I think that if anybody wants to win this thing, it's Obama. And one of the good things is things are so screwed up right now that the quickest way to get back on track, outside of Dr. Biden, Joe Biden's top advisor is Barack Obama. And that's who's going to be consulting with him. That's who Biden will call when he needs advice. That's who he's going to want to pick his brain. He's going to want to have him in the White House for, joint press conferences, or bring other former presidents in to show the bipartisan unity and coming together and America rebuilding and things like that. If he were to win, obviously we need to win. And like I say every time is, we take nothing for granted. We assume they're cheating everywhere. We assume the worst everywhere. We don't believe a word that DeJoy says. The guy is a fraud. The guy is a liar, just like his boss. He's pathological. He needs to resign. He needs to be arrested. He needs to be sharing a cell with the rest of these people. And, this is the first time in American history where a president has brazenly interfered with an election in plain sight, while his entire party sits there spineless with empty words that mean nothing. Here's a challenge to any Republican. I don't want to hear another word you have to say unless you have endorsed Joe Biden or called on Trump to resign. Those two things are the only things you can say that matter. Outside of that, condemning him, I'm upset with him, or my favorite, Susan Collins, the former senator, soon to be former senator. Senator Collins, disappointed. It's like, okay, all right. I think from what I've seen, the Trump supporters that I've spoken with, the Republicans who want to be Republicans and know that this has gone too far, I think that times have changed, and I think young people this time are going to vote. I think that people are going to have the time to do it, and they take it seriously. And I think people are going to make sure that their vote counts. And I don't care if Donald Trump thinks that the election is invalid or valid. It is up to either the Secretary of State or the governor or Attorney General of each state. It's different in each state. Whoever is certifying the election or verifying it. And a lot of them are Republicans. And they've done this in previous elections where Trump claims fraud. And guess what? The only fraud that I've seen is the people who were arrested in Ohio, the former chair of the Republican Party, the people who were arrested in North Carolina. These are the people who are, the Republicans are the ones getting arrested for election fraud. The Republicans are the ones who cannot win without cheating. And that's the key here is if everyone was allowed to vote, they would lose in landslides.
Yeah, because no, you're right. But here's the thing, and I keep saying, what they're doing is they're deflecting. They
right.
know what they're doing. So
right.
they need to brush it off as someone else is doing it, so that you're not looking at them. I mean, it's classic deflection. I mean, and we know this.
Yeah, it's he's been doing a real good job on that on his Twitter feed. Anything that he knows is coming at him, he's like, they're like, oh, okay, well, the Senate confirms that you actually worked with Russia to interfere in the election in 2016. You basically committed treason. And that's he's trying to rewrite history and also allege what is obviously gaslighting and also alleging on others what is alleged of him or what he's actually done. I think, again, if I could compare it to anything, I won't compare it to anything. I'll let General James Mattis, who compared Trump to the Nazis. And I do believe that, the MAGA kind of hats will be treated like a swastika in the future. And it will be hate rhetoric, because that's what it is. It's not something, it's something where there's a lot of different slogans out there, which are retorts to slogans that mean something broader, that mean something better, that means something brighter. And then they try to demean that by undermining it, by having a different slogan. What all it really means is, I'm racist and I'm proud of it. And I can use this mask of hashtag something or other. I'm not going to mention it right now because they'll just repurpose that. And, anyways, but that's the whole point of everything, is they're going to try and run this country into the ground. And I'll just remind everybody that, go right now and make sure that you're registered to vote. And it's not a joke. It's so easy. And I know that, you might be hanging out at home and you haven't had time to check or whatever. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be embarrassed. Just do it right now.
Yeah,
just
check.
Put it at the top of your list, because if you're tired of things, the way things are going in your community, the only way to change that is through the elected officials. And I know that sucks, but that's the truth. So you have to vote, and your vote does matter. And you telling friends to vote does matter. And so you have to do everything you can. Reach out to every person that you're connected to on Facebook, every person that you're connected to on Twitter. Ask them if they're voting. Ask them who they're voting for. Ask them why they're voting for that person if that is Donald Trump. And so it really is that simple. Have conversations. Don't be afraid to have those, because people are more engaging. They see the humanity out there with the coronavirus and the people who are affected with it. There's obviously a lot of people who have sunk into the cult that Trump has created for himself. But there really is an overwhelming force of good American people, and also people, who came to this country that also live here. So I think, again, go and I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, is go and register, or make sure that you're registered and get your ballot now.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, yesterday we had Greg Palast on the show, and he was saying, look, the mail-in ballot's one thing, and he wasn't high on mail-in ballots, but he said, look, a mail-in ballot's not going to matter if you're not registered. If they threw you off the registration rolls and aren't even going to send you a ballot because you're not registered, it's not going to matter. So make sure that you're registered. You check your Secretary of State, your Board of Elections, whatever your state calls for. And most of, I think all of them are online at some place. It's pretty easy to do.
Right. Yeah. It's very easy. And again, it's not something that he's trying to make it really confusing for everybody. In a lot of states, they're creating drop-off boxes so you can get your ballot, you fill out your ballot, and then you go to your precinct or wherever the closest drop-off box is.
Right, which here in Pennsylvania they're doing, and the Trump campaign is actually suing the state of Pennsylvania over that very thing.
There you go. I mean, again, you can't file lawsuits from your administration. Like, that means that he's okay with it. Like, that means that he's pushing for that agenda. It doesn't mean, it's separated from him. This is his administration suing for the... No, they never sue for half the stuff that they're doing. I mean, they're suing to end healthcare still. It's just, I've said this before, if Putin ran America, this is what we'd have. This is literally his dream. I mean, he's bragged about how he could end America in 30 minutes before. And it's just like, I know that everybody kind of wants to stay away from Russia, but like in reality, like, this is a banana, a dirty banana that's sitting next to a medical dumpster could do a better job at this. Like, it was not even not trying.
Yeah, so hold on, let me get this analogy right. A dirty banana next to a medical dumpster. Was this medical waste or is this just regular medical stuff?
Like next to a hospital. Like think of
A dirty banana. No, I'm getting the image in my head, and I guess it's better than the comb over.
Done next to an open can of tuna that has been sitting there with mayo and just all rotting together. And then it sits there, put that in the chair, and it sits there and it does nothing. So no one's obstructing from getting equipment from other countries or buying, competitively. The federal government isn't trying to intervene there. They're just sitting there, like a
rotting banana next to a medical dumpster.
That's it. That would win. I think that could win the election. Even as a joke, I think that he'd outpoll, or I don't know if it's he or she, but I think that they'd outpoll Trump.
Okay. But here's the thing, this is the weird thing because there are a lot of crazy people in this country, and I used to think the Tea Party people were nuts.
Yeah.
But these Q quacks, these people are freaking insane, and yet we've got a president who, they like me. That's all that matters. He's completely okay with it, and I guess he thinks he's saving the world.
It's not him who suffers their wrath. It's me. It's you. It's the average American that suffers their nonsense and rhetoric, and it's a fantasy land and sort of practiced as a religion. And so you can compare it to a cult or whatever. It's still not that organized but Trump wants it to be. And I think that's why he's trying to formalize it.
Yeah.
He's like, if I could get all the conspiracy theorists on the right together in one room, then we can come up with like the greatest pizza banana rotten gate of all time.
Back to the rotten banana.
Obama did this and he took over, he tapped my phone and he was sitting there literally spying on me with binoculars from across the Trump Tower, just spying on me eating KFC, and I could see him from across the way. I mean, that's literally what
that's the kind of paranoia you get from me. You're so spot on. So let me ask you, last line of questioning I've got for you, because, I'm looking at the big news of the day, Steve Bannon being arrested.
Yeah, Grant Stern.
Yeah, I'm happy as can be that, the guy who made white nationalism mainstream has been arrested. Interestingly enough to me, though, my email box is, just filled with people defending him, that this is all political witchcraft. This is, hoax. It's all of that stuff. This is a guy who is accused of stealing money from the very people who are defending him. I mean, it's really kind of, that Stockholm syndrome on steroids.
You don't bring a case like this that's politically charged, no matter who you are, unless it is airtight. You do not make that arrest of Roger Stone unless you know he's guilty and you have him. You don't go for the president's dudes, right? You don't go for those people because you will get destroyed no matter who you are, right? You have to be sure. And so you're going to do extra due diligence and you're going to do extra research and you're going to get extra evidence and extra testimony. Like you can't just rely on just one person. With Steve Bannon, we had found out in November 2016 that he had gotten paid over $950,000 via one of his companies while he was working for the Trump campaign, and that company was part of a super PAC. So that was owned by Robert Mercer, and so Robert Mercer's super PAC paid Steve Bannon over $950,000 via Glittering Steel, which is a company that he owned. And so that was the first time that I reported him to the FBI. And it was, I would say today it's interesting to see people who are criminals that have the most powerful politicians supposedly, at least in America. And it has to be so solid that like he'd have to get like a pardon or commute another sentence or something. Like they're not going to go after them unless there's not just this as well. Keep in mind, like Roger Stone still can face more charges in states, and he can face more federal charges as well. So can Flynn. So can a lot of these other people, Michael Cohen. And so just keep in mind, I think that the bottom line is with Steve Bannon, I think it's something, a reminder that justice can be served. That most people are not above the law, and I think that fate is catching up with a lot of these people, these criminals.
Let's hope that to be the case. But Scott, I appreciate the time as always. Good talk with you. I'm again 75 days. Keep up the fight. Keep working. Look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you so much, and everybody, let's hear the resistance roar. Let's get out there and do this. Let's finish this.
There you go. Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Dworkin, host of the Dworkin Report, and also co-founder of the Democratic Coalition. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1619. That was the day that the first ship bearing enslaved people arrived in North America. It was an English warship called the White Lion that came to Johnstown in the colony of Virginia. The ship was a privateer and had captured 20-odd enslaved people from a Portuguese ship in a raid. Virginian planters were interested in forced labor to work the tobacco fields in the colony. The laws surrounding slavery in Virginia evolved over time. Throughout the 1600s, statutes replacing indentured servants to race-based slavery for life were written into the law books. In 1654, John Kaiser became the first person enslaved under the rule of law in North America. By 1662, a law was passed that children would be considered enslaved or free based on the status of their mother in Virginia. This meant that slavery could pass down from generation to generation. This and similar laws ensured slavery would grow. Historians estimate that 388,000 enslaved people came to what became the United States from Africa. Due to laws passing down slavery to children, by the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million enslaved people in the South. By the early 1800s, enslaved people made up about 1/3 of the Southern population. Initially, enslaved labor worked predominantly to produce crops like tobacco, indigo, and also rice. Some West Africans had developed valuable skills in rice cultivation that white landowners exploited through slavery. With the invention of the cotton gin in 1793, cotton became increasingly important to the Southern economy. The South's dependence on slave labor became more entrenched and spread westward with the growing United States until the Civil War ended the brutality of slavery.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Vice News today reported that the U.S. Postal Service staff, people who work for the Postal Service, they were sent a letter telling them, you cannot talk to the media under any circumstances. According to Vice, there was a memo put out on August the 14th, actually going through what staff should do if they are approached by the media or if they're approached by people on their route, because you never know, they could be the media. And they said, look, the postal people said, look, we need to have, how did it go? They need to present a united message to the customers. They also said that it was imperative that only one person speak on behalf of the Postal Service so that they can deliver an appropriate, accurate, and consistent message. And I keep going, well, who would that spokesperson be? Like what Louis DJ? Are we going to listen to the guy who wants to dismantle and destroy the Postal Service? I don't know. I'm hoping that will not happen, which is why I have reached out to our friends in the postal unions to come on and talk with us. And I've got Jonathan Smith on the line. He's the president of the New York Metro Area Postal Union, the APWU. Jonathan, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So is this accurate? Did they send a memo around saying, hey, shut up, you can't talk to anybody? Basically a gag order on your members?
Oh, yes. They anytime that there's some negative publicity, they always have a campaign to threaten employees with discipline, saying that in the employee labor's manual that if you place the Postal Service in a bad light, you can be disciplined. They also sent a memo around prohibiting them from taking pictures, not wanting pictures to get out of the delayed mail. So it's nothing more than a cover-up and business as usual. I've even got a text from the district manager of New York saying that a lot of the stuff that I was saying in the press was putting the Postal Service in a bad light. So I just responded. My response was, well, you're trying to tell me Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is not putting the Postal Service in a bad light? Me talking to the press, telling them the truth about what's actually going on in the Postal Service is putting them in a bad light? I said, well, the only people that's putting them in a bad light is Mr. DeJoy and anybody that will help his plan of destruction and the delay of mail to the American people. Would that be you? I didn't hear from her anymore.
Yeah, no, you're right. And thank goodness for the people who did, basically, the whistleblowers throughout the Postal Service who said, look, this is what's going on. Because, look, they've got to be hearing from their customers going, hey, why is this taking so long? This isn't how business is usually done. What's going on? I think people deserve answers, and they deserve factual answers, not just, oh, well, the Postal Service is, well, they're the Postal Service.
Absolutely. And, the postal workers are more frustrated than anybody because this puts a bad light on us. We know that we are the most liked government agency by 91% approval rating. And a lot of people think this is simply about delaying the mail, but this is about changing the public opinion about how they see the Postal Service to make it more appetizing to privatize it ultimately. And one of the things that concerns me about some of the legislation that's going on, the legislation like Ms. Maloney put forward was talking about change your orders to delay the mail until after the election. And my question is, do the elderly stop needing their medicine after November 3rd? Do the veterans overseas need to stop hearing from their family after November 3rd? Do the small business owner that needs to compete with these large conglomerates stop needing this mail after November 3rd? What about the stimulus checks that they possibly will, if they can ever pass the HEROES Act? How are they going to send them? Through the mail? Are they not going to need them after November 3rd? So this is not an issue about an election because we elect these political leaders to protect the Postal Service well into the future for the American citizens that need the services of the Postal Service. This is not about you getting through the election period.
Right. And obviously today there was some information that came out that part of DeJoy's plan, and now he's done what Maloney wanted and he's pushed this off until after the election is basically, raising prices on retailers who send packages for that final mile, higher prices for services to Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, screwing over nonprofits, first-class mail for election ballots, and also, and this is the part that, again, I keep coming back to, and maybe you'll agree or you won't agree with me, but the privatization and profitization of our Postal Service, if they get their wet dream list checked off, would be the largest land grab in the history of this country, outside of us stealing it from the Indians. They want to lease government, they want to lease postal space to companies or government agencies, basically, hawking off our assets.
I totally agree with you. This has been, and this is why I'm glad that I'm speaking to you, because people need to look at the big picture, not just what's immediately in front of their face. This is bigger than an election. Like you said, This is the biggest land grab. They have some beautiful murals in these postal services, these post offices. And these post offices was built in the center of the middle of a lot of these communities because they were designed to be the epicenter of the community. This is where people used to meet all the time. If you didn't see anybody all week, there was a chance that you saw them and congregated at the postal service. And you would think someone coming into the postal service wouldn't be trying to give less services. They would be trying to give more services like postal banking, copying services, fishing license, or we do passports. We can extend what the Postal Service does to make it more of an asset to the community, but they don't want to do that because the ultimate goal is to privatize it. This is about big business. This is about money. But most of all, this is about greed.
No, and it's about greed, pure and simple. I mean, just put it as what it is. And also, I would throw in ideology as well, because as you pointed out, the Postal Service, overwhelmingly popular across political lines. Everyone loves their mail carrier and sees, being able to send a letter from one side of this country to the other for a little bit more than half a buck as a real value. Because if we privatize it, understand it's going to be 3 times, 4 times, 5 times that amount, and that seems to be the goal. I mean, it's about it doesn't. I guess it just comes down to the money, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because what privatization always does, privatization costs you more money and gives you less service. It's not like when you pay more money that you're going to get more service, because in a lot of these rural areas, they're just not going to deliver to these areas because it's not cost effective. Right. And one of the things that they're trying to oppress upon the American people, the Postal Service is not a business. It was not a business that was put into the Constitution to make a profit. It's a service. It's a service of communication, so all people have a right to be able to communicate with each other, no matter where you live, what your race is, whatever your religious ideology is. It does not matter. See, Mr. Trump is trying to make it look like we deliver Republican mail or Democratic mail. No, we deliver America's mail, all the mail. We don't want to be politicized. We just want the opportunity to do our job like we've always done our job and provide the quality service that we've always provided to the American people. That's what we want. We want to be left alone to do our job.
Right. Now, this is, again, another in a long list of schemes. And, today I was talking with someone a little bit about, do you remember the old days, just a couple of years ago when we were talking about closing the local post office and moving them into places like Staples? So we would all have these, all the little, the Staples would have our post offices. And I remember at the time going, this is really an idiotic idea and really another bad idea. But, in comparison to what's happening now, that doesn't seem like such a bad idea now. Not that it's a good idea, but compared to what
it's a
we're
very,
seeing.
very bad idea. And let me tell you, this is nothing new. See, the Staples was just a recent thing. Do you remember back some time ago? I'm about to date myself and give away my age. But do you remember where there was a plan to put all the post offices in Sears? Yeah. And they was putting these little post offices. And what happened to Sears? Can you even find a Sears now?
No.
Imagine if they would have been successful in putting the post office in Sears, where we would be right now, what kind of service that we would have right now. This comes back to trying to deceive the people, like the Postal Service is past its time, like it's not an asset to the American people, when it absolutely is. But like we don't even get any tax dollars. They don't pay one tax dollar towards the Postal Service. The Postal Service survives on its goods and services that it sells. And it's been able to survive like that since before the 70s when they had the Great Postal Strike. So once you lose it, it's hard to get it back.
No, you don't get it back. There's no. It's hard to get it back. You don't get it back, and that's
true.
And that's
true. I agree with you.
That's the problem. But here's the thing. The message that I'm hearing from the right, and maybe you can address it, is that, the Postal Service is slow, and now all of their actions so far have been to even make that worse, and they're hemorrhaging money. They're just losing money because people aren't mailing things. There's no more mail. Jonathan, nobody mails anything anymore.
That's not really true. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me back about Prohibition, and people were talking about, we have to do something because we're getting all this problem with addiction, alcoholism, and it's killing our children. And then somebody got a bright idea, and they said, oh, you know, if we tax this, we can make a lot of money on it. Now, all of a sudden, they tax it, and a bootleg liquor became legal. Did it stop killing our children? Did it stop creating alcoholics? No, but what happened is when you put the money into it, all of a sudden, all those problems went away.
Yeah.
Well, the Postal Service is going to be the same way. That if they get their hands on the Postal Service, what used to cost you 55 cents, it's going to cost you $2 and $3. And don't be surprised if somebody gets very smart and they're going to say, you know something, now that we got control of the Postal Service, why don't we charge everybody 2 cents for every email they send out? So we get the money coming and going. So we have to protect a service that has been very good to us. We are the best service in the world. We deal with 47% of the world's mail. And even if people go to UPS, FedEx, they can take the UPS and FedEx, and then they say, well, I thought I took this to UPS or FedEx, and you see a U.S. Postal Service employee delivering the package at your door. Because around Christmas every year, they can't handle the workload. They even bring their mail to the Postal Service for us to take it the last mile and deliver. And you won't miss it until it's gone.
Yeah.
My fight is to keep it from being gone so you don't have to miss it.
So how do we make sure that happens? You know, I've talked a lot about the Postal Enhancement and Accountability Act that was passed during the Bush years. That really poison-pilled the post office by making you guys pre-fund health care and retirement for workers who haven't even been born yet. But outside of undoing that disaster, how do we save our post office? What are you saying we need to be doing?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to stop concentrating on DeJoy's policy and concentrate on the real situation that the Board of Governors is a bipartisan body that was actually appointed by Trump. And they voted unanimously for $75 billion stimulus towards the Postal Service. $25 billion of that was supposed to go for the corona, to deal with the effects of the coronavirus. Another $25 billion was supposed to upgrade the motor vehicle fleet and upgrade some of the mail processing equipment. And the other $25 billion was connected to a loan, which we have no interest to add debt to more debt. So the first thing that we have to do before we think about anything else, we have to get a hold of our political leaders in the House and in the Senate and tell them to pass that $25 billion stimulus. Once we pass that $25 billion stimulus and we secure the Postal Service future for past the election time, past the coronavirus pandemic, then we can sit down in the weeds and we can deal with the Postal Accountability Enhancement Act, which is crippling us. No other business would be able to survive with them kind of handcuffs around them. Like you're saying, paying for benefits for people that's not even born yet. And what's happening is, I hate to say it, but a lot of people say, well, look what the Republicans did. But when that passed in 2006, they couldn't have passed it without a lot of Democratic support. It's the Democrats that also helped pass that bill, and it's a mess that they created, and it's a mess that they need to fix.
No, I'm with you. So the other part of this, and the last part for me, and I think the most important part, is it comes down to us. It comes down to we, the voters, who, as you've said, 91% of people see positively of the Postal Service. It's us maintaining and continuing to have control of our Postal Service, and really, understanding what the Constitution wanted for a Postal Service, and that it should be in the hands of we the people, and we should be holding on to it with a death grip and not letting it go.
I absolutely agree with you, but the message that we have to send right now is the greatest opportunity that we can. We have to send that message at the voters' box. We can't let this is nothing more than voter suppression. Donald Trump feels as though vote by mail is detrimental to the Republican Party. But we got to say, listen, when you get your ballot, we have to put it in the mail as early. When we get it, we got to get it back out. And we will get that mail processed, and we will get it to the ballot agency. But they have to also remember, when you get a ballot in the mail, it is a ballot. And they have a lot of drop boxes at these polling sites. They have drop boxes all over. They say that you just got to Google where's the drop boxes, and you fill it out. You go and you drop it in the drop box, and you don't have to stand in line. But what you can't do is not participate in the process, because that's what they want you to do. Don't let anybody shut you up and quell your voice, because you have a right. You have a right to let your voice be heard, and it has to be heard at the ballot box. And the greatest message that you can send to Donald Trump and the Republicans that is trying to destroy the Postal Service is vote, vote, and then vote some more.
Yep, 75 days from today, Election Day. Make sure you're registered. Make sure if you do go the mail-in way, you get your ballot in time and you get it back in time. And remember, 75 days from today is Election Day. Jonathan, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the thoughts. Keep up the great work, and I hope you'll come back and talk with us again real soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support, and please keep getting the word out that the Postal Service, we will do anything but fail. Rain, snow, sleet, gloom of night, we will deliver.
Also coronavirus.
And coronavirus.
There you go. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Jonathan Smith, president of the New York Metro Area Postal Union, APWU. Rain, sleet, snow, or virus. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1964. President Lyndon Baines Johnson gave a mid-morning address in the Rose Garden of the White House. He was there to sign the Economic Opportunity Act that launched what became known as Johnson's War on Poverty. During his speech, the president declared, "On this occasion, the American people and our American system are making history." He said, "We will work through our communities all over the country to develop comprehensive community action programs with remedial education, with job training, with retraining, with health and employment counseling, with neighborhood improvement. We will strike at poverty's roots." The initiative included multiple programs. Among them was a Job Corps to provide basic workplace training to young workers ages 16 to 21. Work-study money was made available for low-income college students. Assistance was provided for agricultural workers and rural families. In 1965, Congress allocated $800 million for the program, but many in Congress opposed the initiative and did all they could to limit its scope and funding. Historians, the press, and the general public have long debated the impact of President Johnson's war on poverty. Many have noted that the funding levels were never high enough for a fully effective jobs training and anti-poverty program. In 1981, Congress repealed the act during the first year of Ronald Reagan's presidency. Fortunately for many families living in poverty, the programs started as a result of President Johnson's war on poverty still remain. The AFL-CIO published an article reflecting on the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty. It called for raising the minimum wage. The article stated, "Clearly, we cannot be serious about ending poverty as long as those who get employment still find themselves below poverty." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I think my favorite response to Steve Bannon being arrested so far has been, I'd love to see him in tears. That would have been funny. But that Donald Trump says he's sad. He's sad. Sads that the guy who brought us white nationalism, put him into the White House, is potentially going to go to jail and become a songbird. He's sad. Anyway, here to talk about the sad president and also his right-hand man and puppet master Steve Bannon's indictment. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. She's a fantastic reporter over at Raw Story, has covered this extensively. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. I spent way too much time talking about Steve Bannon today, and writing about Steve Bannon and reading about Steve Bannon, looking at photos of Steve Bannon with his hair all, crazy like. And,
Better you than me. So the president's sad. He's sad that one of his right-hand men are criminals.
I think what's really happening is Trump is a little bit nervous because what I kind of gathered from some of the people doing legal commentary on this to talk about kind of the case and everything is that the two charges that are against Bannon carry with them about a 20-year penalty each. That's the maximum penalty, and given the fact that he is, first-time offender, theoretically.
Rich white guy.
Right, and I mean, he's not going to have 40 years in prison, but he will go to prison. And so this is one of those things where how well is a white supremacist going to do in a New York prison versus, you know, singing his everything he knows to the prosecutors. And one of the former district attorneys that I read today was talking about how he, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a case about Russia or about Ukraine or whatever. It can really kind of be anything. Basically, the lawyer is going to come in and say, okay, what do you know? What do you know that will get you out of this?
Yeah.
And if he then says, well, let me tell you about Jared Kushner, let me tell you about Donald Trump Jr., then that's the ball game. The other thing that could happen here is that, you know, he could go to prison and Trump just pardons him really quick. I don't know necessarily that the trial is going to happen that quickly. You know, it would have to happen before he's gone in January. So kind of one of those weird things where it's like, oh, if this takes a while, you know, how would he do that? He wouldn't, if he lost, obviously, there's no way he's getting Bannon out of prison.
Right.
And then Bannon may very well be more inclined to cut a deal.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about it this way, you know, because he was arrested on a 172-foot yacht worth $28 million. So I thought, you know, the prosecutor would come in and go, hey, you got kicked off the 172-foot yacht. Here's a life vest. Just tell us, well, a little bit about this. And I got to tell you, I look at him as somebody who he's not going to sacrifice himself for someone else. I think he'll sing.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, what we have seen from Bannon so far is he already has sold Donald Trump out. Right, like he has written all about trashing the Trump family. He's criticized Trump for all of these different things on Breitbart. Then they fired him from Breitbart. You know, he has not been afraid to hit back against Donald Trump. And so I think this is something where, you know, I think Bannon is probably more inclined to put himself before anybody else. That's the one thing you kind of learn about Steve Bannon when you read about him is he really didn't care about anybody but himself. And so I don't know. I'm going to bet on him selling somebody out.
But what do you say to the person, Sarah, who goes, you know, this is such a small amount of money? I mean, really, for someone like Bannon, $1 million, is that really that big of a deal, especially when you consider that, you know, he's got the ear of, you know, gazillionaires. You know, because the first response I saw from people go, wow, this is trumped up. You know, even if he stole all $25 million, it's not a big deal. And I'm kind of in this weird world where the people that he is accused of fleecing are, well, Trump's people. And there's part of me goes, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either. But one thing I will say, there was one of the stories that I wrote today talked about a relationship that We Build the Wall had with a North Dakota contracting firm that was given a $400 million contract from the Department of Homeland Security to help do stuff with the wall. There's a process that you have to go through with federal contracts. Like a bunch of people have to bid on it. They have to choose, you know, based on a funding algorithm thing. Like it can't be the lowest, it can't be the highest, and blah, blah, blah. That didn't happen here. And it was one of those things where it was a strange kind of out of the blue contract for somebody that was a huge Trump donor, a huge donor to a member of the U.S. Senate from North Dakota who ended up lobbying on behalf of that firm. It was somebody who spent $100,000 on lobbying, who used Steve Bannon, who did all kinds of Fox News appearances. And so this is something where if, you know, yeah, Steve Bannon had a couple of $1 million and yeah, he funneled it into, you know, buying whatever the hell he was buying. But if there's a link here to that, you know, that we can take that from that relationship about the wall and building the, you know, We Build the Wall, the citizen built wall that didn't that fall over, I think. Yeah. Anyway, right. So obviously not the best contracting firm that there is. But if that happened, then we're looking at way more than just, a couple $1 million. We're looking at a little bit closer to like 450 million, and that, and this is a federal contract. Like, this
Right.
is the government giving money to Steve Bannon's BFF.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is these are patronage gigs. I mean, these were, hey, thanks for being my buddy. We'll throw you some contracts.
It's the swamp. It's exactly the swamp that Donald Trump ran against.
Yeah, well, as we've said many times, he may have drained the swamp, but just filled it with bigger and uglier monsters. Steve Bannon
for
being
real.
one of the biggest of them all, in my view. But here's the thing, and I guess this is one of those weird moments where you go, Trump better hope he wins in 75 days, because New York isn't looking overly hospitable. And there are a lot of people who I think very soon will be lining up as a chorus to be singing against him, and Dumb Jr. and Kush and the rest of them. So they're going to lie, cheat, steal, do whatever they can do to win election in 75 days.
Yeah, this isn't just about Donald Trump winning the presidency. This is about Donald Trump trying to avoid prosecution for a whole lot of crimes that, happened in office, that Bob Mueller and the DOJ were not okay prosecuting because of the DOJ rule or whatever. It could be very interesting if this ends up, if the Southern District of New York case about Trump's finances, if Trump gets reelected and that ends up becoming a thing and he gets criminally prosecuted and is convicted while in office, that could be fun. I'm sure if the Republican Senate is still there, they still wouldn't impeach him. They just pretend like he was out sick or something for a couple days.
He's golfing.
So, right? He's golfing. We have what Julia Louis-Dreyfus called him, Meek Ponce, as the VP. He can just step in.
No, I mean, I was looking at today also, the story today coming, out of New York, where the judge threw out Trump's claim to quash the tax returns for, the prosecutors there in the Southern District of New York. And I'm going, I don't know that New York's going to be an overly, friendly place for him to return to, with all the, the talk of tax evasion and all of the stuff going around there.
And I think, honestly, he understands that. And I think that's one of the reasons, honestly, he moved to Florida, not just because he wants to add another vote to his tally in Florida. Florida has laws about what things can be taken away from somebody if they're in a lawsuit or
if they
do something criminal,
or if they kill their ex-wife and a boyfriend.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's where OJ moved.
OJ Simpson.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the reason OJ Simpson moved there. So it's, it's one of the reasons I was like, I wonder if he's really that nervous about, being convicted, and that's the reason he moved. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It could just be, he's upset with New York because, I don't know, they made him mad, which, I wouldn't put it past me. But
they painted Black Lives Matter out in front of his house.
Yeah, that was kind of great.
But here's the weird thing. I mean, there are even, I'm looking at this. We're in a weird moment where, I saw this article, and you've written a piece on this about this Jennifer Rubin, who wrote this article over at the Washington Post that, basically, the Republicans and Trump are the wackos and the bigots and the wackos, to use her words. And, you look at this and, just yesterday, you've got Trump basically endorsing or being appreciative of the Q quacks, and all of that nonsense. And you go, of course, this is not who they are now. This is who they've been. You go from, Pat Buchanan forward. This is the Republican Party, not just one or two extremists. This is them.
And this is who they've been for a long time. It may be a different name. It may be Q now. It was just Breitbart before. There have been crazy. It was Alex Jones before that. There have been so many crazy conspiracy theories about these people. And one of the reasons I love reading Jennifer Rubin is she is a super conservative. And she's so angry at the GOP and at conservatives. And it fascinates me. Like, I'm always really interested in, like, Republicans, like, explain more about you to me, I just try and understand. I try and like figure out where they're coming from and why and what the motivation is and what the hell they're thinking. And so like, I love reading her stuff. And so she writes these like prolific attacks on the Republicans, and it's fascinating. But one of the things she said today is she just kind of went all out and was like, no, you guys have become the party of bigots and weirdos. Like she flat out called them weirdos, mentioning Green in Georgia and Lomer in Florida. And Trump basically got up there and endorsed that. And what's interesting is you didn't really see a whole lot of members of Congress or U.S. senators denouncing that. What you saw, though, people like Ben Shapiro posted WTF. There were a bunch of conservatives who were like, this is not cool, dude. These people are nuts. These are like the Breitbart types were saying stuff like that. And I was just kind of sitting back laughing and being like, you know what? Y'all made this bed.
Well,
So,
what's that saying about the inmates in the asylum?
Yeah. They let them loose and now they've handed them a gun.
And
So-
not just a gun, an arsenal.
Flamethrower. Yeah.
A freaking arsenal. And it's just crazy. I mean, and this is why, when I saw Obama's speech, talking about, I need you to save democracy, it was so poignant. And so, and for Obama to come out and go that far, I think speaks volumes of the moment that we're in, because, you can like Obama, you can not like Obama, you can be lukewarm on him like I am, but he's measured. And when he comes out and says something this drastic, I think you listen.
Yeah, if anybody who's a progressive who lived through 8 years of Obama and we're just like, come on, man, like begging him to jump up and do something crazy or say something, like really fight on something. And this is what it looks like when he's been pushed this far. When he's just like, look, we're in trouble, y'all. Like, stuff's going down, and our democracy is really, truly at stake here. And I mean, really, it sounds like strong language. It sounds like hyperbole, but the reality is Donald Trump has torn down these institutions in a way that if they're not rebuilt, if we do not have these institutions in place, the way that Obama became a president, that's not going to exist anymore. We're going to have voter suppression. We won't have a new Voting Rights Act that helps protect people of color from being marginalized. All of these things that I feel like, help to bring about these amazing candidates that we have now. Everybody from Barack Obama to Tammy Baldwin to, even we have a Democrat in Oklahoma, right? Like, these kinds of things are really at risk here. And I think that's why he, fought so hard and was like, look, y'all, this is serious. And I just hope people listen to him.
Yeah. I think the convention's been very interesting. I've said it a number of times. People are probably tired of hearing it. I wish I was in Milwaukee. I wish we were having the big shindig. I really enjoy them. But this hasn't been horrible. I mean, this has actually been, I think they've done a pretty good job given what they had in front of them.
Yeah, it's been great. The production has been incredible. The videos have been really powerful. I love that this has been, a lot of people have been saying that the message or that the theme of all of this unintentionally has been vote like your life depends on it, because it does. And I do think that is part of it. I think the other message that I've really gleaned from it is there are just story after story of people saying, Joe Biden cared about me. And that is the one thing that I have always really loved about Biden. I don't agree with him on some things, I do on others, but he cares about people's lives and making them better. He cares about the person in the elevator. He cares about, everybody's mother, and like he really genuinely cares. And we have a president right now who does not care about your life. He doesn't care about your grandmother. And being able to see her in an assisted living home or saving your mom from COVID, he does not care. And I think that we deserve someone who does.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting you point that out because, earlier in the week I went on this tirade about, there are people in the Black Lives Matter camp. There are people in the Blue Lives Matter camp. There are people in the All Lives Matter camp. I'm actually in the, sadly, No Lives Matter camp. Someone like Donald Trump and the people who really run this country, they don't give a tinker's damn about any of us. So none of our lives matter to them, which is, it points out that we don't have a health care plan. They haven't passed a stimulus to help people who are struggling. They haven't done enough on the virus. So to me, again, this is just another one of those moments where, and agree or don't agree, these people don't care about us. So no lives matter.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that in full force next week with the Republican convention. This week you have just seen American faces, every race and gender and background, and these amazing people who are persevering at a really difficult time for us and staying hopeful and staying positive and remembering that we're all in this together. And you're not going to see that at the Republican Party convention.
Yeah. I'm expecting next week to be Fear Fest 2020. How can we scare the
like
hell out of Whitey?
Like it's going to be like 2004, but instead of 9/11, it's just going to be like Trump and Whitey.
Break out the sheets. We're going in, boys. That's probably a bit too far, no?
Well, sometimes some people say a MAGA hat is the same as a white hood.
Yeah, and I think you're the second person who said that today. That that's maybe when this is over, it's going to be the the symbol. In Germany, they've outlawed the Nazi flag. Instead, they fly the Confederate flag, which is their hate flag. Maybe we'll at some point look maybe because I already look at the MAGA hat like I look at the Confederate flag. They for me symbolize the same bit of treason, the same bit of anti-American sentiment that I think the people who wear them and fly them actually want us to believe.
And I noticed that Goodyear said the same thing.
So what do you think of that?
And bless them for it.
What do you think of that? This is again. If you don't care one way or another about politics, at some point, don't you just want the pain and the chaos to stop? The one thing I know Joe Biden is not going to do, he is not going to go out on Twitter or not going to call for a boycott of an American company. He's just not going to cause that kind of division. But we've got a guy in the White House now who just, it's just a Wednesday.
At a time when we have so many people out of work, he wants to take down another American company. Like, what the hell are you thinking, dude? Come on. And not to mention, like, yes, it's cruel and yes, it's just stupid, but politically, that's Ohio, man. Like, what are you thinking? Don't you know his entire political crew was just like, oh God, not again.
Here we go again. And here's the thing.
They're all updating their resumes to take him off.
Well, I guess it is one of those things. Last question. Did you see Harris's speech yesterday?
I did. It was really good.
I was not a fan of her. I said she was the safe choice. Wall Street and Silicon Valley, very happy. But I think in the two moments that I've seen her, since they've gotten a hold of her and kind of done a little shaping and molding, I think she's done a really good job.
I think she was a good contrast to the doom and gloom of Barack Obama. He kind of paved the way for her to talk about her experience and that American idealism that I feel like we're losing right now. And that was endearing to me.
Yeah. It was good stuff. Sarah, I appreciate the time. As always, keep up the fantastic work you do there at Raw Story. Love it. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you. Be safe.
Good stuff. As always, our good friend Sarah Burris. Again, make sure you check out her work over at Raw Story. Good stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Tonight in California, fires burning at both ends of the state.
Extreme weather broils the United States.
More and more glaciers are falling into the ocean.
Greenland ice sheet potentially hits point of no return, study warns. Plus, Trump administration officially opens pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling.
All of those disappointments and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Mr. President, let me ask you about a breaking news story from the Wall Street Journal. They say the Trump administration plans to open up part of the pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we're looking at different things. We may or may not do it. We did do ANWR, as you know.
Mr. President, ANWR stands for Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You didn't know that, did you?
You know, I hate to say it. In theory, I should go down as a great environmental president.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, 2020 has brought us a global pandemic, a plague of locusts, murder hornets, and now out here in California, fire tornadoes.
Yes, indeed it has. But more on that in a moment. First, an update on global temperature records. Europe's climate service had ranked July 2020 as the third hottest July ever recorded.
But they were wrong?
Yeah, not really. NASA and NOAA, using a different data set, have announced that July 2020 was the second warmest July since record keeping began in the mid-1800s.
See, NASA and NOAA fudging the data.
The 6 warmest Julys have all occurred in the past 6 years. We also have the earliest 11th named storm ever recorded in the Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical storm Josephine, now spinning safely away from the U.S., beat 2005's Hurricane Katrina by 10 days due to unusually warm and, in some areas, record warm oceans. The U.S. is enduring an outbreak of wild extreme weather. 75,000 Iowa residents are still without electricity more than a week after that derecho, a wall of severe storms hundreds of miles long, knocked out power during a heat wave. It also destroyed 13 million acres of Iowa's corn crop.
And for folks who don't know, a derecho is just a huge, like a hurricane in the middle of nowhere.
A hurricane on land.
Yep.
An exceptionally intense heat wave in the west is generating hazardous smog pollution and exacerbating wildfires in Colorado, Utah, and California, forcing emergency planners to scramble to arrange safe shelter for fire evacuees amid a pandemic. In Northern California, a massive wildfire spawned fire tornadoes, literally tornado force winds caused by the fire. And California's Death Valley National Park appears to have hit 130 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday. If confirmed, that would be the new highest ever reliably recorded temperature on the planet.
I'm pretty sure that we should have a Twilight Zone episode. Just name it 2020.
In Arizona, crucial southwest monsoon rains have failed to appear. Phoenix is embroiled in its hottest summer on record to date. And yes, all of these consequences of heat are directly linked to man-made global warming, according to CBS News meteorologist Jeff Berardelli.
You know, climate change is definitely contributing to this heat wave. In fact, the West is warming faster than pretty much any other place in the United States.
Meanwhile, a new study warned late last week that, as predicted, the Greenland ice sheet is now out of balance, losing more ice into the ocean every year than it gains from snowfall. The study warns that if the rate of ice loss continues to accelerate, the ice sheet will reach a point of no return. But that tragic outcome depends on choices we make today and whether governments choose to cut greenhouse gas emissions that cause dangerous global warming. That's according to glaciologist Harry Zekulari of Delft University in an interview with France 24.
It's clear that there's too much ice being lost, and so there's no equilibrium. But of course, what we're going to do today and the actions that we're going to take will have a big influence on the future evolution.
Also in the Arctic Circle, on Monday, the Trump Interior Department released final plans to open up more than 1 million acres of the pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas drilling, overturning 5 decades of protection for the largest remaining stretch of wilderness in the United States. Native American tribes and environmental groups have already promised to sue to stop the drilling.
And Donald Trump doesn't even know that ANWR is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Finally, in Alaska's North Slope, where man-made global warming is rapidly melting permafrost, oil giant ConocoPhillips plans to use massive industrial chillers to keep the Arctic tundra frozen beneath its roads and oil drilling pads, literally to refreeze the soil so that they can continue drilling for the oil that is causing the warming, that in turn is causing the permafrost to melt beneath their feet. Irony is dead in 2020.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to or didn't want to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So everyone wants to know what's happening with
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So everyone wants to know what's happening with the coronavirus, where we go, what's being done. I keep going. I think it's all going to be bad until the next administration, until a grown-up administration comes in and actually starts taking this seriously. Or maybe until we grow up and start taking this seriously. But today, the good folks over at the Center for American Progress Action Fund had another one of their events this week under the heading of Moving Forward. This one on the coronavirus and how we deal with it and all of that. They had an incredible panel of folks to come talk about the effects of COVID-19 on our democracy. The keynote address was given by Senator Amy Klobuchar, which I really like some of the things she does. But here to share some thoughts on today's panel and maybe what we find out happened, I've asked Daniela Gibbs-Laget to come talk with us. She's the Executive Vice President there at the Center for American Progress for Communications and Strategy. Daniela, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So congratulations. I understand the event went very well. You had really an all-star panel of folks to come talk about this. I guess, what were your thoughts? Let's start there.
Yeah, so, we had a series of events this week, sort of looking at where we are now, but really looking at how we move forward on a whole host of things. And, of course, the coronavirus sort of clouds and colors everything that we talk about. And so the panel that I got to moderate with Senator Klobuchar was specifically looking at the effects of COVID-19 and our democracy and how we can protect everyone's right to vote in this environment. And it was really a great conversation. Senator Klobuchar really started off talking about the work that she's been doing in the Senate for months now to guarantee that everybody has the right and access to vote, whether they want to vote by mail or whether they want to vote in person. And, I just want to say that given everything that we're hearing about what's happening with the post office and, the attempts by this administration to sabotage vote by mail, it is equally important that Democrats, progressives, anyone who cares about our franchise, that we ensure that people who still want to or need to vote in person feel that they can do so safely or as safely as possible in the middle of a pandemic. And that's really what the panelists talked about as well.
Yeah, it seems to me, and we've been having this discussion on the program for the last couple of weeks, in talking about the mail-in ballot. And there's a lot of people that I have on that are really concerned that this is how the election will be stolen. In fact, we spoke with a guest last night who said, over 20% of the mail-in ballots generally aren't counted. So, that doesn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling that we haven't done it well in the past. And now you're going to heap, massive amounts of people into this. And I have not great hope for this.
Yeah, I think it's a very large country, and so it's going to depend on jurisdiction and where you are on the challenges you might encounter with vote by mail. There's some states like Colorado and Utah that have been doing this for years, and Oregon, and they know how to do it, and it runs perfectly smoothly, and there are no problems. And then there are other states where they're trying to scale up very quickly, and with the slowdowns at the post office, there was some concern about what that might look like. But I will remind people the good folks, the career people who work at the post office, they remind us that they go through a little thing called Christmas every year. And they are used to a sudden deluge daily of mail, and they can handle it as long as they're not being sabotaged, which is why I'm really glad that Speaker Pelosi, called this hearing with the Postmaster General, and that they're going to hold a vote on making sure that the post office gets the money that they need to handle this volume, and that, Postmaster DeJoy knows that he's under a microscope, and he already walked back some of the terrible things that he tried to put in place, but that people are going to be watching his every single move to make sure that this administration doesn't try to put up any more roadblocks.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I've heard the Christmas argument before, Daniela. That's, months of ramping up of employment and getting people in just for that seasonal work. I haven't seen that ramp up yet. And I worry that they don't have the manpower at this moment. And the longer this takes to begin to implement, if that is the idea that this is like a Christmas type event, we're sorely behind in ramping up for that.
Yeah, no, we are, and that's why the HEROES Act that was passed by the House months ago, if Mitch McConnell and the Senate had done their jobs, we wouldn't necessarily be in this position, because that bill has funding for the post office to do just that, to ramp up, to prepare, to get ready for this. So, that's why I said earlier, like in light of all these obstacles that they're running into and just the lack of wanting to do anything on the part of Senate Republicans, it's really important to make sure that people know when they can start voting early in person and do so.
Right.
Some states you can start voting as soon as the middle of September. So I really encourage everybody to go and check and see when is as soon as they can go and vote. If for some reason they don't trust the mail in their city, find out when you can go in person, vote early, and encourage all your friends to do that too. If you already know who you're going to vote for, just get it done.
What's amazing to me is, the anti-government people, the people who tell us that government can't do anything right, they've got to be all tickled pink over the fact that they're able to bring down the Postal Service. I mean, it plays for them, for the people who tell us that government can't or shouldn't do anything. All of the roadblocks, all of the things that they've put into place to ensure that the Postal Service at this moment can't rise to this challenge. They've got to be, this is their ideology in practice.
Yeah, and and these are the people who want to privatize everything too, right? And say, we can privatize the post office. Look at FedEx. Look, okay, if I try to mail a regular letter through FedEx, that's going to cost me a lot of money. And people rely on the post office. Like, I have a podcast, and I was talking about this earlier today. There was a story of a farmer in Maine who gets their baby chicks through the mail.
Right.
Never had a problem in decades. They had 1,000 baby chicks arrive dead because the post office is backed up. This is hurting people's livelihoods. This is affecting people getting their medicine. This is affecting people paying their bills on time. Like, this is more than just, messing with the election is bad enough and, trying to undercut a leg of our, democracy. But you're also messing with people's lives for an ideology. It's really disheartening and disgusting that there aren't more people on the Republican side of the aisle completely outraged about this, because it's not just hurting Democrats, it's hurting Republicans too.
And that's the weird thing about this, because I actually think that, the Republican, demographic, the people who voted for Trump, the demographic who voted heavily for him, skew a little bit older. And during this moment, wouldn't you want them to have access? And look, Trump's been kind of bipolar on this. It's all bad. It's all ripe with fraud. Don't do it. It's horrible. Except in Florida, where it's perfectly fine, and we want to make sure that you come out and vote.
Yeah, exactly. And he's able to vote by mail. And his press secretary tripping all over herself to say that there's a difference between the mail-in voting that he does and absentee balloting and vote by mail. Like, no, honey, they're all the same thing. And you're trying to say that what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander.
Yeah, it's crazy. But isn't she great? I think she is, for the position that she's in, I think she is incredible at the job she does. Which is, lie at every moment, and every word out of her mouth is an alternative fact. But I think she does it in a way that is so much better than Sarah Huckabee Sanders was.
It's because she does it and she's slightly more pleasant about it. That's why. I mean, I hate to say that, like, as a woman, but like when I see Sarah Huckabee Sanders up there, like, why is she so mean? It's like you're lying and you're mean about it. But, you know, Kayleigh has like this sort of sunny disposition and, you know, like, yeah, you can't believe anything that's coming out of her mouth because it's not true, but it's just delivered in a nicer, more friendlier package with less thorns on it.
Yeah, more Fox News. I always thought about Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I always thought on her nightstand has to either be a razor blade or a bottle of Jack, and she decides in the morning which way she's going to go. Because look, if I had that job, I think I'd probably take to the pipe as well. But you know, that aside, so you know, out of this, one of the panelists you had was Mayor Bottoms from Atlanta, and you know, for the African American community, this is kind of a life or death thing because, you know, I'm in fact just today I looked at CNN's website and they had a you know, you could put your, you know, where you live and what race you are, and it would tell you what your chances of dying from COVID-19 are. And you know, as a white guy living in Pennsylvania, I'm going to be a little bit better than the majority and much better than African Americans around the country. So you know, I got to imagine from her perspective, allowing people to vote by mail is not just, you know, your right to the franchise and we want people to vote and all that, which we do, but it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah, she actually mentioned that a couple times during our panel, you know, echoing the themes that you heard from, you know, people like Michelle Obama and other convention speakers that, you know, you need to vote like your life depends on it because it does. Because we've seen, now it's not a hypothetical anymore, we've seen what a President Trump can do. He's doing a lot of the things that he said he was going to do. You know, I believed him, which is why I didn't vote for him.
Right.
But we've seen it, so it's no longer hypothetical. So what do you think 4 years of a president who doesn't have to worry about re-election is going to do? It will, as President Obama said, it will destroy this country. And, you know, Mayor Lance Bottoms was very clear about making sure that people get out and vote. And she was talking about the great things that they were doing in Atlanta to make sure that early voting, you know, to the extent that Georgia lets them do it, but in same-day voting is done in a safe way, like the Atlanta Hawks opening up their stadium. Plenty of room. You can socially distance. People feel safe and comfortable. And getting the word out that that is an option because, yeah, she emphasized, all of our panelists emphasized how important it is for people to get out and vote. And let's not forget that we also have the census going on. So people need to not only fill out their census, but like you have to vote up and down the ticket because this is the year where they're going to set congressional districts and a whole bunch of policies are going to be set for the next 10 years based off of this election.
Yeah, I mean, this is you know, again, they say this is the most important election of our lifetime. And I've heard this every election of my lifetime, and I've gone, yeah, that's what you said last time. This time I actually believe it.
Yeah, I was like, this time it's really, really true. Because I shudder to think about what a completely unhinged Donald Trump will do.
Yeah, it's not good. But, you know, here's the thing. Here's the other part of this. You know, we're focused on the Postal Service and focused on the mail-in ballot, which I guess, you know, for all the other shenanigans they're doing is the issue of the moment. We haven't talked about cross-check at all. We haven't talked about the voter purges that are happening in states all across the country and all of the other things that have been done throughout the years to keep people away from the ballot box. And I'm not at all diminishing the Postal Service issue or the you know, the mail-in ballot stuff, but there's all the other stuff too. Because you know, as my guest last night said, what's the point in having a functional postal service and an incredible mail-in ballot campaign if you're not registered to vote? If they threw you off the rolls and stole your vote by not allowing you to even consider voting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is a point that Sunita Gupta, the head of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, was on the panel. She brought that up as well. She said the Postal Service is just one tool in their mighty toolbox of voter disenfranchisement. They have been working for years at this playbook of silent voter purges. So you show up to the polls and all of a sudden you're not registered to vote. You know, of many, you know, the closing of polling places at the very last minute not for valid reasons like they don't have poll workers, but just for nefarious, made-up reasons. And, oh, gee, they always happen to be in areas where the majority of the voting population are people of color. There are many, many things that states across the country are doing to try to prevent as many people voting as possible. And so she and her group are working with tons of groups on the ground to make sure that, A, people are registered to vote, but also that people check their registration, as you say, to make sure that they still are registered to vote. C, they are putting the mechanisms in place to make sure that on election day, they've got poll watchers, that the Democratic Party people who are actually allowed inside the polls, that they're properly staffed, that the lawyers are at the ready to make sure that if there are any problems that arise, there's a network and a way for people to rise it up quickly so it can get fixed.
Yeah, I think about Georgia. Since you had Mayor Bottoms on your panel, I think it was Randolph County, Georgia, where they were going to close like all of the polling places. And maybe there would be one left, and it was one of those things that was so blatantly apparent what they were doing, and it didn't even seem to. Oh, gee, we got caught. And it's the same thing with this postal issue with DeJoy. Oh, okay, well, we got caught, so we won't do it. I'm going, no, there should be heads rolling over the fact that you were even thinking about doing this.
Right, exactly. Well, that all flows from the top. The president seems to get away with a lot of stuff. So his minions are going to try and do the exact same thing. Crazy, crazy stuff. Last question I've got for you. How do folks access this? Do you guys have this on video that people can take a look at? Because I hope folks will be able to take a look at it. Yeah, so all of our events, if you go to our homepage at AmericanProgress.org and click on the Move Forward slider, that'll pull up all the pages to all the events that we did this week in the series. Yeah, and you guys have been doing fantastic work, and I hope folks will take a look at it. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at it. But Daniela, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing some thoughts, and keep up the great work. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good stuff. Daniela Gibbs-Leger, Executive Vice President there of Communications there at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Make sure you check out their work. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1619. That was the day that the first ship bearing enslaved people arrived in North America. It was an English warship called the White Lion that came to Johnstown in the colony of Virginia. The ship was a privateer and had captured 20-odd enslaved people from a Portuguese ship in a raid. Virginian planters were interested in forced labor to work the tobacco fields in the colony. The laws surrounding slavery in Virginia evolved over time. Throughout the 1600s, statutes replacing indentured servants to race-based slavery for life were written into the law books. In 1654, John Kaiser became the first person enslaved under the rule of law in North America. By 1662, a law was passed that children would be considered enslaved or free based on the status of their mother in Virginia. This meant that slavery could pass down from generation to generation. This and similar laws ensured slavery would grow. Historians estimate that 388,000 enslaved people came to what became the United States from Africa. Due to laws passing down slavery to children, by the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million enslaved people in the South. By the early 1800s, enslaved people made up about 1/3 of the Southern population. Initially, enslaved labor worked predominantly to produce crops like tobacco, indigo, and also rice. Some West Africans had developed valuable skills in rice cultivation that white landowners exploited through slavery. With the invention of the cotton gin in 1793, cotton became increasingly important to the Southern economy. The South's dependence on slave labor became more entrenched and spread westward with the growing United States until the Civil War ended the brutality of slavery.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
No, they used to say if voting were all that important, they wouldn't let you vote. It's amazing how the lengths they'll go to ensure that we don't get out and cast our ballot. Because, honestly, the only way you stop this machine at this moment, and this is one of those historical kind of times, and this is what's exciting about this, the fact that we're actually, and you're living history. You're at a crossroads. And as much as I don't like John Kasich, I like the image of him standing at the crossroad going, which way do we go? Which path do we take? And ultimately, what kind of a country do we leave for our children and our grandchildren? This is that kind of moment. This is, I tell my kids this stuff all the time. I go, you can look back in your life. When you get to be a little bit older, you'll look back at single decisions that you've made. At one thing happening or another. And I can point to maybe 3 or 4 events in my lifetime that have really completely changed the course of my existence. And had I made a different choice, I most certainly wouldn't be where I am now. Whether that's good or bad is a whole nother discussion. But this is where you are, and but those couple of decisions, and I'm sure everyone can go back through their lives and go, this one. And it doesn't even have to be a huge decision. It's just one thing that you took one direction instead of the other, and it completely changed your existence. This is that moment for our country. This is something that our kids will look back on and go, yeah, this is that moment. This is that moment where we chose to turn away from the authoritarian leanings, full out blown fascism of what Trump is pulling. Or we choose a different path. Now, look, I would have liked the path to have been a little bit different than the choice we have, but I fully have no problem voting for Joe Biden, because I think he will restore dignity. I think he will restore civility. I think he'll restore humanity. I think he will restore just common decency to our office. And look, be one of those things, because I can't tell you how many parents I talk to who go, even people who voted for Trump, who have said, I don't want my kids to emulate the president. When I was a kid, everyone went, we're going to grow up and be president. It's, such a high esteemed position. He's really cheapened it. And you knew this was going to happen. You knew this was part of the game plan. I fully expected, and I think, it's one of those things right around the inauguration. I was joking about that. Eventually there would be a big, gold T on top of the White House. Which, if he gets a second term, probably will be. Don't laugh at it. He may want to put his brand on it, because after all, he wants to be on Mount Rushmore. He wants to leave his mark. Personally, I think he would give up his face on Mount Rushmore just to put a giant T, just a big giant gold crappy T, like some of the buildings you see all around. But this is one of those moments. It's one of those times in our history where we're gonna make a choice, and it's gonna lead us in either the right direction or the really, really wrong direction. It's just, I guess, where we are. And it comes back to, the old Reagan question. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And sadly, for the majority of people, the answer is clearly no. So we'll see. Now, I said back in 2016, and I actually said in April, that I thought he was going to win. I don't know that he wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan again without massive voter suppression. You can go back through, Wisconsin especially, the number of votes that were suppressed and not counted. I expect full-on, right-wing legal challenges in every swing state. So this is, I guess it goes back to, what Obama said in 2008. If they're going to steal, 7 million votes, we need to get 8. I'm of the mindset if they're going to steal 7 million, you're going to need 14 million. So this is that election you cannot sit out. And Daniela hit on, I think, the other most important point. This has to be the kind of election that is a mandate, is an overwhelming mandate that says, we're gonna move in a direction. This kind of schizophrenic, bipolar, all over the place, political, moment we're in isn't helping us. Having a split House and Senate, having all the branches, and normally I'm okay with that as long as they can work together. Sadly, they can't. We need the voters to say, we need a direction. And we need to move in that direction and quickly, because I expect Joe Biden to come into office and there to be a major crisis. I expect the economy to be not great. I know Wall Street's fat and happy and wonderful for them. But for average, everyday working people, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. They couldn't get a simple stimulus bill done. They couldn't get the infusion. And even Donald Trump himself has said we need to prime the pump. The Republicans just are not going to do it. So for me, it comes down to some pretty simple stuff. You need to vote for, in my view, Joe Biden, and then down ticket as well. Because there's going to be a lot of cleaning up to do. And the Democrats are going to fight amongst themselves enough. They're going to break out the circular firing squad and shoot themselves enough. But by having a control of Republicans in the Senate, not good. Not good whatsoever. Because we're going to get exactly what we got. If Mitch McConnell is still the majority leader, we're going to continue to see the House pass, really good legislation, really smart, pieces of legislation to help us solve problems, and Mitch McConnell ignore them and basically make paperweights out of them. Using paperweights as paperweights. That's what McConnell has been doing with the 450 some odd pieces of legislation that Democrats have passed that the Republicans haven't even considered looking at. That, my friends, is a problem. It is. It's very simple. Very simple problem, and hopefully we will solve that. And talking about a simple problem, I want to end on, something a little less down. Evidently, the Tooth Fairy is very unhappy. Yes, I'm going to end with a Tooth Fairy pun. Evidently, there's a coin shortage going on. And the AP reported the other day that the coin shortage has hit retailers, laundromats, and the Tooth Fairy. And look, I don't think kids want jingly stuff. I think they want dollars now. A quarter doesn't make it anymore. But this is one of those weird moments where you go, how is it we have a coin shortage? How's that possible? They're saying because, so many businesses are closed. There's a bunch of coins sitting in the cash register, which you figure out, and that people aren't spending money anymore. So they're hoarding it. They're hoarding the coins. I'm not buying it. But even if that were true, and let's say that it is, don't we have machines to print more coins? I know we got machines that print more dollars. Couldn't you just ramp up the machines, which, mostly are automated to begin with? You wouldn't need to hire too many more people. But in a time of really high unemployment, wouldn't you want to hire some people, maybe make some extra coins? And then once this is over, maybe take some of the old ones out and, something like that. Just a thought. Here's my problem. And I've said this before. My problem is after this virus, once we get past this, the push is really going to be, and corporate America wants it. Some in government want it. They want to end. They want to end cash. They want a credit-based society. They want a card-based society. They want everything electronic. Why? Because it's easily traceable. You're not going to be able to stash money under your mattress for a rainy day without them knowing about it because it's on your phone or whatever. I have a problem with this. I really do. And this is one of those things that conservatives, the freedom people, this is something conservatives should be really concerned about. So the QAnon types, the Tea Party types, the conspiratorial right-wing, God-fearing, flag-loving Christian types, they should be afraid of this because this is real control. Once they can trace every penny that you have, they know how long it'll take to break you. A lot of people have a little stash set aside, a little rainy day fund. Once they take the coins and the dollars, well, that's it. That's the end of you. So there's my conspiracy theory of the day. QAnon folks, take it and run. Or better yet, just run. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We are off on Friday. Scheduled a little break after the convention. Looking forward to and ramping up and gearing up for what will be, oh my goodness, fun and fear and smear. If Maslow were to define the bottom layer of his hierarchy, it's going to be next week. So make sure you tune in. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.